Tonight, this isn't just about politics. It's about your wallet, your future, and the choices shaping America's place in the world. And while headlines scream about tariffs and trade wars, the real story is how these decisions ripple into your daily life, from the price of gas to the stability of your savings. That's where Edward Grant Report steps in, cutting through the noise to show you what matters most. Donald Trump has announced sweeping new tariffs, a 25% hit on goods tied to global trade partners. Oil markets surged within hours, Wall Street turned volatile, and banks like JP Morgan braced for turbulence. Allies and rivals alike are voicing sharp criticism, while everyday Americans wonder what this means for their paychecks, their investments, and their future security. Tonight, we break down the impact, the risks, and the choices ahead, because this story isn't just about Washington or Wall Street, it's about you. Donald Trump's announcement of a sweeping 25% tariff marks one of the most aggressive trade measures in recent years, aimed directly at countries that continue commerce with Iran. The move is framed as a strategic attempt to weaken China's energy influence and reassert American leverage in global markets. Within hours of the declaration, financial analysts warned of ripple effects across multiple sectors. Oil futures surged. Multinational corporations tied to Far East trade saw sharp sell-offs, and Wall Street braced for heightened volatility. The policy is not just a headline, it signals a recalibration of U.S. trade priorities, with potential consequences for everyday Americans in the form of rising consumer costs and market instability. Allies expressed concern over escalating tensions, while rivals condemned the measure as economic coercion. For Edward Grant Reports, this moment is the opening act of a larger story, how a single policy decision can reshape both global alliances and personal financial realities. The announcement of Trump's sweeping tariff sent an instant jolt through global oil and energy markets. Within hours, crude futures surged as traders scrambled to price in the potential disruption to supply chains and the heightened risk of geopolitical instability. West Texas Intermediate, WTI, and Brent crude both spiked, reflecting fears that the tariff could trigger retaliatory measures from major energy exporters and complicate existing trade routes. Analysts noted that the move effectively tied U.S. trade policy to the volatility of Middle Eastern energy flows, amplifying uncertainty for refiners, shippers, and consumers alike. Energy companies with exposure to international markets saw their stock values swing wildly, while utilities braced for higher input costs. For everyday Americans, the ripple effect translated into concerns over rising gas prices, heating bills, and inflationary pressure. What began as a political maneuver quickly became a pocketbook issue, underscoring how deeply interconnected global energy markets are with domestic economic stability. Wall Street's reaction to Trump's tariff announcement was immediate and turbulent, underscoring the fragility of investor confidence in the face of sudden policy shifts. Major indices opened with sharp swings as traders attempted to digest the implications of a 25% tariff on global trade partners. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dipped before recovering slightly, while the S&P 500 and Nasdaq saw heightened volatility, reflecting uncertainty across both industrial and tech sectors. Banking giants like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs issued cautious notes, warning clients of potential ripple effects on credit markets and international investment flows. Hedge funds scrambled to reposition portfolios, shifting capital into safer assets such as gold and U.S. Treasuries. Retail investors, meanwhile, expressed concern over the stability of retirement accounts and mutual funds, as volatility threatened long-term gains. The mood on Wall Street was not one of panic, but of wary recalibration, as analysts debated whether this tariff represented a short-term shock or the beginning of a prolonged era of trade-driven instability. As Trump's tariff announcement reverberated through markets, major banks like JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, and Citigroup quickly shifted into defensive mode. Analysts inside these institutions warned clients of heightened credit risk, potential liquidity crunches, and the possibility of retaliatory measures from foreign governments that could destabilize global banking flows. J.P. Morgan, with its deep exposure to international trade finance, faced immediate questions about how tariffs might affect cross-border lending and corporate accounts tied to Asia and the Middle East. Internal reports suggested that banks were preparing for increased demand in safe haven assets, while simultaneously bracing for higher default risks among companies caught in the tariffs' crossfire. Executives emphasized resilience, but the tone was cautious. This was not a routine policy change, but a structural shock that could reshape lending strategies, investment portfolios, and even regulatory oversight. For Edward Grant reports, the story is clear. When banks brace for turbulence, the ripple effects reach every household that depends on credit, savings, and financial stability. The ripple effects of Trump's tariff announcement extended far beyond U.S. borders, sparking immediate reactions from allies and rivals alike. European leaders voiced concern that the sweeping 25% tariff could destabilize already fragile trade relationships, warning of retaliatory measures if their industries were caught in the crossfire. Canada and Mexico, key partners in North American trade, expressed unease about the precedent such unilateral action sets, fearing it could undermine regional cooperation. Meanwhile, China condemned the move outright, framing it as economic coercion designed to weaken its global influence. Middle Eastern nations tied to energy exports criticized the policy as disruptive and potentially harmful to global supply chains. International financial institutions, including the IMF, cautioned that escalating trade tensions could slow global growth and fuel inflationary pressures. What emerged was not just a U.S. policy shift, but a global controversy, with America's allies questioning its reliability and its rivals sharpening their rhetoric. For everyday Americans, Trump's tariff announcement quickly shifted from a distant policy debate to a personal financial concern. Rising oil prices translated into higher costs at the gas pump, while utilities warned of potential increases in heating and electricity bills. Grocery chains and retailers, dependent on global supply chains, signaled that consumer prices could climb as import costs surged. Families already navigating inflation felt the pressure of yet another economic uncertainty, questioning how long their paychecks would stretch. Small businesses, reliant on affordable imports and stable credit, worried about shrinking margins and reduced access to financing. The conversation around tariffs was no longer confined to Wall Street analysts or political commentators. It became a kitchen table issue, sparking questions about savings, retirement security, and the affordability of daily life. Edward Grant reports highlights this shift. When global trade policy changes, the impact lands directly in the homes of ordinary citizens. At the heart of Edward Grant reports is a simple mission: to translate complex global events into clear, personal insights that matter for your future. Trump's tariff announcement is not just a headline about trade wars or political maneuvering. It's a signal of how interconnected your daily life is with decisions made in Washington and beyond. Edward Grant frames the story by connecting the dots: how oil prices affect your commute, how Wall Street volatility touches your retirement savings, and how international tensions can reshape the cost of living in your household. Rather than drowning viewers in jargon or partisan spin, the analysis focuses on practical consequences and long-term choices. Will these tariffs spark inflation, shift alliances, or redefine America's role in global markets? Edward Grant's breakdown ensures you walk away not just informed, but prepared, with a sharper understanding of how today's news shapes tomorrow's reality for you and your family.